Don't you ever threaten me again.
Rest of you, I will never work for you again. We are done. And if you ever come near my family again, I will kill you.
Now that's what I'm talking about. My man Mark wasn't playing any games with Cecil in this episode, which, speaking of, I love that flashback of Cecil's origins with the GDA. We saw the Guardians broke up. There is so much to talk about in this breakdown and review of Season 3, Episode 2 of Invincible. Spoilers ahead. We open on the beach to a flashback of young Cecil on a mission. As he enters the store, he notices a symbol on the outside. As he enters and pulls out his gun, and we see the cashier acts like she's unaware why he's here, as he heads back to the back room. Now, after exchanging some blows, she tells Cecil her true intentions as he eventually gets the upper hand on her, but in comes her partner as Cecil is overmatched against the Order of the Freeing Fist. Now, even after taking some pretty good hits, and we can clearly see that Cecil is overmatched, we see he managed to call in reinforcements, but unfortunately it's too late as the two sacrifice themselves by turning on the biological weapon that will kill thousands. We see their skin burning off as blood oozes from their body as Cecil, without hesitation, closed them inside with the weapon, but he nearly dies doing so as his skin immediately peels off his body as his backup finally arrives. Now we see that Cecil was able to heal due to the technology of GDA with artificial skin, as Director Ratcliffe thanks him for making the save, but Cecil wants to know how many were killed. Now, even though he was able to save thousands, some of the gas unfortunately got out, and Cecil isn't happy to learn that 17 bystanders were still killed in the attack. Now, as a reminder that Cecil messed up, he decides to keep a little bit of skin on his face, which explains the scar that we see on him in the present day storyline, as he says to his director,
It's a reminder that I messed up and to never let it happen again.
Now flash forward to seeing the Pentagon is under attack by the lead lizard member, Komodo Dragon, who we remember from last season, as he kills multiple people, leaving Cecil to protecting his injured director as he tries to fend off Komodo by himself until unexpected help arrives. Now Cecil is shocked to find that the same insane members of the Order of the Freeing Fist are alive and working for the director, as he tells Cecil that they have been fixed because they were too good to waste. Now Cecil sounds just like Mark when he shares his mind to the director about how he feels about them working for the government. Cecil expresses his gratitude for them saving their lives as he shoots them both in the head, killing them. As he tells his director,
I don't work with criminals, not even if they're...
Now, no offense to the premiere episode this season, which I have a review for, but this flashback and this opening scene was better than anything from that premiere episode. Seeing Cecil being a man of honor and having a code and not trusting criminals or working with them, and knowing how much that sentiment has changed in the current timeline that we're in, and seeing that change in him, which change is a big theme of this episode. But again, seeing this young version of Cecil versus the one we know now is just a crazy character development, and I just love this opening of this episode. Now, after his actions, we see Cecil's being sent to prison with some of the most dangerous criminals who now have their eyes on the fresh meat. Now, cut to 3 years later, and not only has Cecil survived, but he's also basically running this place and has stopped all the violence in the prison and has somehow gained the respect from all of them. We even see them calling him boss as he gets a visit from Director Ratcliffe. He tells him that he's transferring to a special projects unit and he wants Cecil to replace him. Cecil bringing order to the prison makes him the perfect candidate to bring an order into the chaos outside of the prison walls. Being sent to prison was both a test and his punishment for him being rehabilitated to understand what it takes to be a leader. Now, Cecil declines his offer as the director tells him,
You can be the good guy, or the guy who saves the world. You can't be both.
This being a very important lesson for Cecil that he will carry on with him. Now we cut to the present day where Mark is still in disbelief that Cecil has him in the White Room for his own protection. Mark walks closer to him, but the Reanimants step in front of him as Mark is visibly getting more upset as Cecil tries to explain to him that he has tunnel vision when people disagree with him. Now Cecil claims that he's scared of Mark as one of the Reanimant grabs Mark's arm, leading to Mark punching his jaw clean off, which activates the others. Now Mark proceeds to punch through them him like butter, leaving piles of blood and oil all across the white room, and also leaving Mark to wondering if that's all Cecil's got for him. Now the once white room is now turned red, where there looks to be hundreds if not thousands of reanimated waiting for orders to attack Mark. Now Mark wants Cecil to admit what he's done and threatens him, even though he said he doesn't do that, but people change. Now Cecil gives him one last warning, but Mark jumps towards him, leading Cecil to setting off a sound wave of Mark's earpiece that was planted in his head while he was in recovery last season, as Cecil had that sound remade from the creature Mark fought in Atlantis. Now Cecil tells him to go home as Mark is beyond reason and blasts into the sky, but Cecil sets off the sound again as Mark crash lands in a parking lot. Mark is shocked to learn that Cecil put a weapon in him and sees him as a threat similar to his father. As Mark flies off, we see Cecil tracks him and knows exactly where he's headed, as Mark is headed to the Guardians for Rudy's help. Cut to Mark crash landing in their headquarters and him wanting Rudy to help him to remove the chip in his head as Cecil arrives. Now the Guardians being torn between believing Mark, who tells them that Cecil's trying to kill him, but Cecil tells them that he just wants Mark to leave with him. Mark tells the Guardians what both Sinclair and Darkwing have done in their past by killing people. As Cecil activates the chip again, we see the reanimates surrounding Mark, but the Guardians won't stand around and watch as Rex makes the first move and the rest of them jump into action to help Mark and take down the reanimate. Rex makes an honorable but ultimately dumb move to explode the detonator, but there's a dead man switch on it which continues the frequency in Mark's head as Rudy tries to block the signal. As the reanimates start to beat on Mark, Cecil sees the damage and makes the call to shut them down, but it's too late as the signal gets blocked and Mark goes next level kill mode and the Guardians are left in shock to see this dark side of Mark. This shot right here is almost reminiscent to the season 1 episode 1 ending where Omni-Man killed all the Guardians, but obviously under different circumstances, but it almost feels like what they say, like father, like son. We see Mark choking Cecil as he tells him that he'll never work for him again, and if he ever comes near him or his family, he's gonna kill him. As Mark has Rudy immediately remove the chip from his head, no questions asked. Now before moving on, I know episode 1 had to set all this up that we get in this episode, and as I stated in that review, I wasn't the biggest fan of episode 1, but forget all that. The cold opening in this episode, leading into Cecil's backstory, into seeing Mark losing his mind, and taking action versus the reanimate versus Cecil, was so incredibly tense, and now I feel like we're officially back with Invincible. Now cut to the Grayson's house where Eve is there and Debbie is pissed about what Cecil did, which is just reaffirming everything she just spoke to him about in the last episode. Mark tells his mom what he promised Cecil about killing him if he ever comes near his family again, as Oliver is about that action and wonder why Mark didn't kill him. Now Debbie has to remind little Oliver that killing is never an option, as they tell him to relax and not rush getting to becoming a hero too fast. Like I stated in episode 1, it's going to be very interesting seeing Oliver grow up so quickly in this new season, and like I said, by the end of the season, I would imagine he's going to be older than Mark, but I just wonder how many of these life lessons are going to stick with Oliver moving forward. Now we see Mark and Eve talking about what happened, but the conversation shifts into what happened earlier in the day about Mark asking her out. Now Mark admits his feelings about how he always felt about Eve, but she isn't ready to just say yes again and needs time and space to really think about if they actually could work, but she promises that she'll always have his back. Now back at the Guardians headquarters, we see that they're doing cleanup duty, but the tensions are still high within the group. As veteran Samson blames Mark for starting it by his actions at the Pentagon, but we see Monster Girl completely disagrees with him. Now we see Immortal steps in and he says that Mark is just like his father, and from here we see a split within the team. We have on one side Kate and Immortal and Samson, who is believing that Cecil did the right thing, while we have on the other side Monster Girl, Rex, and Ray, who are against what Cecil did. Now we see Ray and Kate get into what happened to both of them at the missile base about them both knocking on Death's door. As Immortal tells them to get back to work, but Rex refuses, leading Immortal to telling them,
"Oh, for the love of God! The Guardians are the best superheroes in the world! It's a privilege and an honor to work here! Yes, there's hardship! Yes, there's sacrifice! If you children don't like that, get out!"
Well, it looks like Samson is wrong and this family is breakable, as we see Monster Girl, Rex, Bulletproof Ray, and even Rudy decide to leave, leaving the remaining members of the Guardians to Samson, Immortal, and Kate and Shapesmith. Now as the Guardians pack their bags, we see that Amanda tells Rudy that she's happy that he decided to go with him, but we know that Rudy still doesn't have a clue on when she's flirting with him. He doesn't understand her feelings towards him. As Samson gives him some advice, we see Rudy admits that his decision came down to the fact that Invincible is the most powerful hero on the planet, and that one day he may need his help, and hopes that this decision of leaving and taking his side will benefit him one day. Now, like I stated in my episode 1 breakdown, I knew the whole Unbreakable family thing wasn't going to last that long, but I didn't anticipate it to happen in the next episode. So it's going to be really interesting to see this new version of the Guardians, and we'll talk about their new member a little bit later, but I am curious to know how long this is going to last and if they're ever going to get back together. Cut to the next morning, we see Mark tells William and Rick about Sinclair working with Cecil despite almost killing them both. Mark questions if he should have killed Sinclair instead of sparing his life, which would have prevented everything that just happened. Now, Rick isn't holding any grudges against anyone and tells Mark,
"If you killed him, you'd be just like him. The world doesn't need more people like that. It needs more people like Invincible."
It's moments like this that I love about this show. It's just a constant reminder that Mark is different from his father. He isn't a killer like his father or other superheroes or other villains. I really love this, and I'm really intrigued to see where this friendship goes, with not only William being obviously Mark's best friend, but I am curious to see how Rick mixes into this season. But again, a really good scene. Now, as the dust settles, we see Debbie on a date with her realtor friend Paul. We see Eve is back in college, and what remains of the Guardians, we see them listening to Cecil's game plan to moving forward, as he suggests they begin the recruitment process, and he suggests Darkwing, who arrives. Now, we watch as Darkwing admits his past and being a murderer, but he says he's changed. Again, the big theme of this episode is watching these characters change, and we see Immortal welcomes him to the team, and they now have a new member, which makes me kind of wonder if they're going to maybe get Sinclair in the mix and he be another member of the team as well. I guess we'll have to find out. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but I really enjoyed the theme of this episode about how people can change, as we see Donald questions if putting Darkwing on the Guardians is a good idea. Now, cut back to the flashback where we see Cecil accepting the director position and meeting Donald and the team. Now, on his first day on the job, we see Cecil is quickly called in to seeing a new potential threat to Earth, as this individual is fighting off a creature, and it's the one and only Omni-Man. Now, Cecil decides to pay Omni-Man a visit face-to-face in person instead of sending Immortal, which is breaking protocol. Now, as Cecil introduces himself to Omni-Man, we see him returning to the Pentagon when he's watching back the tape, and as the readings come in about Omni-Man, they know that he was lying about his intentions on Earth. Cecil knows that it's in Earth's best interest to play along with Omni-Man's mission to protecting it, at least for now, as Cecil will allow Omni-Man to pay Hero, but he's always going to keep tabs on him. Again, I love the backstory as we're introduced to Omni-Man, and also that in the back of his mind, Cecil knew he couldn't trust him, which just speaks to how Cecil's acting towards Mark, because he just feels like you can never trust the Viltrumite no matter what they say. As we end the episode, we're cutting back to Cecil reaffirming that Darkwing joined the team, but Donald questions what now with Invincible, as Cecil ends with saying,
We can be the good guys, or we can be the guys that save the world. We can't be both.
Now, cutting to the post-credit scene, we see Eve and Mark meeting up once again. Mark wants more in the relationship between the two, as he tells her that the only thing on his mind during the whole Cecil situation was if he died, he would never get this chance to see her again. And that's when he knew that his feelings about her were real. As we see Eve accepts his feelings, and Mark and Eve are now officially dating, which to me is a good thing, but also a bad thing, because good things in this world don't survive. This to me is what I wanted from episode 1, and I'm not even referring to the incredible action in this episode, but it's the character development. It's the story behind Cecil having to change his point of view in order to do what he deems to be necessary to protecting Earth. I love all the stuff that we got with Mark. I love that Mark finally let loose, but still not cross that line by killing Cecil. From top to bottom, this was truly a great episode. Now, this is going to be the end of my recap and breakdown of episode 2 of season 3 of Invincible. Now, if you all haven't already, check out my thoughts about episode 1, and I am about to press play on episode 3, so keep an eye out for that video coming pretty soon if it's not already available on the channel to watch now. If you all enjoyed my breakdown of this episode, please hit the like button, share this video, but more importantly, share your thoughts, your theories, your deeper meanings you all took away from this episode. And also, if this is your first time here, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget, you all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.